Over the past decade, Denis Villeneuve has quickly become one of the most renowned directors in Hollywood, with hits like Arrival, Blade Runner 2049, and especially the Dune trilogy. Villeneuve has become almost a household name. What is often lost in all his success, though, is the unusual story behind it. Villeneuve's success didn't come overnight, and his path to the top was anything but ordinary. Over the next few months, I'll be doing a retrospective on the illustrious career of Denis Villeneuve. Throughout this series, we'll be discussing some of the greatest films of the 21st century, but in order to fully understand the significance of those releases, it's essential that we start at the very beginning. Today we'll be discussing Villeneuve's early career, and more specifically, his directorial debut, August 32nd on Earth. Denis Villeneuve initially studied science out of high school, before eventually deciding to study cinema at the University of Quebec in Montreal. Afterward, he made many short films, commercials, and music videos before finally directing his first feature film at the age of 31. This feature is the aforementioned August 32nd on Earth, which Villeneuve wrote the screenplay for as well. Released in 1998, August 32nd on Earth tells the story of a model named Simone attempting to add meaning to her life after surviving a car accident. In a single word, the film focuses on existentialism. Our protagonist is having an existential crisis and believes the only way to resolve it is to have a child. The only problem is that she's single, so she asks her best friend Philippe to have a child with her and she'll raise it herself. Philippe jokingly tells her that he'll only do it if they have intercourse in a desert. This then leads the pair to travel from Montreal to the salt flats outside of Salt Lake City, Utah. And this whole sequence is visually impressive. It works perfectly for a low-budget film like this, as the location itself does a lot of the heavy lifting. There are some great shots here, and the setting does a good job of complementing both the themes of the film and its general vibe. The beautiful yet somewhat unnerving landscape of the salt flats fits the atmosphere the story is trying to create, one that is quite zany and strange. For example, there are many one-liners that seem to be out of place, the editing is fast-paced and eccentric to say the least, and there's even a moment where one of the characters intentionally looks directly at the camera in response to an awkward situation. These somewhat off-putting aesthetic choices are in line with the film's title as well. August 32nd, of course, is a date that doesn't exist, and clarifying that we're on Earth seems to be an unnecessary detail, but the title actually makes a lot of sense in context. The term August 32nd directly stems from a moment early in the story, when a character's broken watch incorrectly displays the date as August 32nd. From a thematic perspective, though, it refers to our protagonist Simone getting an improbable new lease on life following her survival from what should have been a fatal wreck. And the addition of the detail on Earth is likely meant to accentuate this point by clarifying that she is in fact still alive on Earth. Once our protagonists arrive in the salt flats, though, the story mostly devolves into random encounters with various things that remind the characters of their own mortality and the fragility of life. For example, Simone gets a nosebleed at one point in the middle of the movie, which serves as a callback to her nosebleed in the opening. It reminds her and the audience of just how close she was to losing her life just a couple of days ago. And then there's a somewhat infamous encounter with the charred corpse in the desert, which is a pretty on-the-nose reference to the concept of mortality. And I say somewhat infamous because for something to be infamous, it kind of has to be popular in the first place, and nobody actually watched this movie. Among people who have seen it, though, there seems to be quite a bit of confusion as to why this moment even exists. The biggest example of things just happening out of nowhere on August 32nd, though, is the ending, where Philippe gets beaten into a coma by a group of guys in the middle of the street. This has no basis in anything that has taken place or has even been mentioned thus far, and doesn't really do much to move the plot forward. Again, while seemingly random, its primary purpose is just to reiterate the fragility of life. Still, it gets to a point in this story where it becomes boring. August 32nd seems to just have one thing to say, and it keeps repeating it over and over for an hour and a half. This film also routinely flies in the face of what would be considered conventional screenwriting. Concepts like Chekhov's gun, for example, just do not apply to August 32nd. Just because something is introduced does not mean it's relevant. This sort of works in its favor, though. I mentioned how existentialism is a core theme here, and a part of that is the belief that the world is innately chaotic and absurd. Not everything has meaning or a clearly defined purpose. In life, sometimes things just happen. In a similar way, things like Philippe's girlfriend, his job, or the aforementioned charred corpse end up having no bearing on the narrative. Jumping way ahead in Villeneuve's career here, though, judging by his response to this film's release, I'd argue this unorthodox writing style may not have been entirely intentional. I guess saying that August 32nd only has one thing to say is a bit unfair, though. There's also this idea of unrequited love, but I'd argue the movie never really gives the audience a reason to care about that. I suppose if you find that concept relatable, you may find something to enjoy with that plotline, but if you want a story focusing on unrequited love, you aren't exactly starving for options, so I'd argue your time is much better spent elsewhere. My biggest complaint with this story, though, has to be the protagonist. She is genuinely unlikable. She's irresponsible, immature, and sociopathic. This idea of searching for meaning in life just doesn't work when I don't care for the person engaging in the search. The primary conflict is this question of how she'll overcome this existential crisis, but unfortunately, I just don't care enough about her to be invested in this plotline. Overall, August 32nd on Earth leaves me with one simple thought: what's the point? Which I guess is in line with the narrative, so who knows, maybe that was intentional. Still, I'm more so left questioning the point of this film's existence rather than the meaning of life. Either way, the whole movie just comes off as self-indulgent and art-housey, for lack of a better term. As we all know though, Denis Villeneuve would go on to grow a lot from this, and as we'll later discover, August 32nd played an important role in his growth as a filmmaker. While I found August 32nd on Earth very underwhelming, it isn't entirely irredeemable. If you had told me the man who directed this would go on to direct some of my favorite films though, I definitely wouldn't have believed you. Next week we'll be taking a look at Denis Villeneuve's second feature, Maelstrom, which would prove to be yet another vital step in Villeneuve's career. If that sounds interesting to you, feel free to subscribe for more content like this. Thanks for watching.